rolling. So again, about 22 minutes. And that's that. Good luck. Oh, and
Yes.
at the end, if you can give them your card, and then again, Mr. Howell, if there's anybody else that you can think of or anything like that, can you please send them our way?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Howell, can I get, what part of Lancaster are you from?
I'm from the 7th Ward, or church town, or whatever term you want to give it.
Okay. So, can you tell us about growing up in the 7th Ward and any experiences that you might have had at the river, at the Conestoga River or Creek, maybe?
Yeah, pogies, yeah. That's what we used to call it, pogies. Growing up, my experience in Lancaster was very similar to most other African Americans. The three significant things that we were involved in was church, Christmas attics, and of course, in the summertime, playing different sports and all. But of course, one of the things we wanted to do was swim. And we couldn't swim at Rocky Springs. Once a year, we had what we call a Sunday school picnic. That was the Lancaster and Coatesville. Now, it wasn't just for kids or people who just went to church. It was for the community. In this case, the 7th Ward in Lancaster, and in Coatesville, that section where most of the blacks live. We came together once a year at Rocky Springs. And of course, we had the amusements and all that, but we couldn't go swimming. Every year, I mean, this is a big event for when I was coming up, and this is in the 40s, because I'm 84. And so as a youngster, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, we would look forward to the Rocky Springs what we call Rocky Springs Picnic. And when we got there, somehow, miraculously, the swimming pool was closed. It was either needed to be fixed, or they had to do this, they had to do that. But soon as Sunday was over with, that particular Sunday, the pool was open again. So the only place we had to go swimming was, as some people, you were using the term creek, we call it pogies. In my day, anyhow. And what it was is, it was down there at the Conestoga Creek there. And we had a certain spot that we used to go as a youngster to swim. I used to want to be with the older boys. And if you want to go with the older boys, you had to do what they did. In order to learn to swim, I didn't know how to swim. But you learned how to swim if you went down to pogies. Because what the older boys used to do is pick you up, throw you in the water, throw you right in the creek. They wouldn't let you drown, but you learned to swim pretty quickly. At least splash enough to get back to the bank. And that was my experience there at the creek. Look forward to that throughout the summer, most of the summer days, and it got really hot back there in those days, even hotter than it is now. We look forward to go to pogies, and pogies was our swimming pool until I became an adult. And when I came out of the service, I was 21 when I came out of the service. I went in when I was 18, came out when I was 21, and we started to march. First of all, we started to march downtown and all about getting jobs for African Americans. The other thing was, we went and started to march and protest over at Rocky Springs at the pool, where they had to eventually close down the pool. They closed it down completely. And then miraculously, the other, like Maples Grove, the different other places that had swimming, all of a sudden they began to accept blacks, because if they didn't, we were going to march there too. That was our next event. After Rocky Springs, then we were going to go out to these different places, Overlook, Maple Grove, and other places. And that kind of broke down what's going on today. You can go now and swim just about in any overlook, all these places. It doesn't matter what your color of your skin is. Except I just read recently in the newspaper that the county park is going to be closed. They don't have enough, they said, lifeguards and all that. Well, we're going right back to where it was in the 40s. You couldn't, most blacks are not going to go out there in the county to swim. And so they're going to be faced with the same kind of situation that I was faced with that's coming up. The other thing is, as I was coming up, I guess when I got to be a teenager, and so now we're talking about just the late 80s or early 90s, blacks began to go over to waterworks to swim. They used to go over there. But that, to me, was a little too dangerous. I didn't mess around with that. But that was basically, as far as the swimming goes, that came off. Should I just hold it?
Yep, you can just put it.
Oh, I see. I think I got it. Okay, well, I mean, that's basically was the significance around swimming. I mean, it was either one or two places as I was coming up. And like I said, in my later years of going from less than the teens to the teens, people began to go swimming over at Overlook. I mean, not Overlook, but the waterworks. Can I put it anywhere?
It needs to be re-edited, so.
Can you do it? I can't see. Yeah, I guess, my memory isn't as great as it used to be, being 84, but I guess the other significant event that I could recall coming up was being a member of the Scouts. And as a result of being a member of the Scouts, each year we went to Camp Shan. And as a result, when we went to Camp Shan, we had a chance to swim. Again, but that was more or less in a pond, more or less.
Did your parents ever tell you not to swim down at the river?
Oh yeah, I was forbidden to go down to Pogies, what I call the river. You call it the river, I call it Pogies. But you can't, a youngster, you're going to do it. I mean, we did it, and after getting reprimanded or disciplined for a certain amount of times. And it wasn't no use of my parents telling me not to go. But they thought it was dangerous. Yeah. And if I think back now as an adult, it was dangerous. But back then, that wasn't dangerous. This was our activity. This was an outlet for me. Like I said, the other thing surely was significant in my life growing up was the Christmas Attic Center. I mean, that was the web that connected everything culturally, educationally, developmentally, and you name it. That Christmas Attics was it. I mean, that's where, at least when I came up, where African Americans are used to go. Now, when I became an adult, then I know you interviewed like Jerry Wilson and them. Well, Boys Club became significant to them, but not to me. I mean, Boys Club didn't deal with folks to color my skin back then. Or if they did, it was like you could count it on your hands. Christmas Attics was the place. I mean, what was so significant about Christmas Attics was that it replaced institutions that you see blacks today participating in, such as basketball. You go to Christmas Attics, it's a little gym, cement wall. We used to have to put mats up on the wall. And then on the stage, right there at the stage, was another basket, and you put mats on it right there at the stage part. And what we used to do is have tournaments and a league with Reading, Harrisburg, Stilton, Westchester, Coatesville. I mean, it was big time. You went there, you usually had a game on Friday, after Friday, and then there was dancing, and that was our activities. But there were a whole host of other things that we did at Christmas Addicts that helped mold and develop me becoming the man that I became.
So awesome. So with the river, can you tell us, did your family ever do any family events and activities down at the river, or any like community events that might have happened from the 7th Ward down at the river when you were growing up?
Not that I can recall. Like I said, if it was Rocky Springs was the one place where we had what I want to call family reunion, or call whatever you want to call it, because that was the big day. I mean, that was a big day with Coatesville and Lancaster combined. And we're talking about primarily blacks now. We're not talking about other folks. I mean, there were other folks in the park, but for us, it was baseball early in the morning, and from there, the amusements and so forth, but we couldn't swim.
Now, we've heard some people tell us stories about different parts of the river, some of the parts of the floor of the river being like sticky, or they would actually swim with their sneakers on.
Yeah.
Do you have that kind of?
Yeah. We wore sneakers.
Okay.
Yeah. We kept our sneakers on. That's why when we got home, we really got scolded, because your sneakers all soaking wet, and you're going home with them, and you didn't have time to dry them out. But I don't, it was, thinking back today, or thinking back as an adult, I mean, the pogies was dirty. It wasn't no clean pool. But that's where we had to go swimming if we wanted to swim. There was nowhere else. There was nowhere else for blacks in the 7th Ward to go swimming, except, as I can recall, what I call as pogies, and eventually the waterworks.
So, do you have any stories about people swimming down by the waterworks? Because that's where there's that dam down there. Right?
Yeah. Well, it used to be a dam. The spot that we used to go, where I went swimming, you had to go across a bridge it had train tracks on it. And then in between the rails was you can look down. It was a pretty good height down, and I used to be scared to go there. But eventually, if I wanted to go swimming, that's what I had to do. And once you done it a couple of times, then you weren't scared anymore. I mean, it was like you probably put blindfolds on us, and we walked across there without any problem. But like I said, now probably at a later date there may be activities where families met there. But our people on Green Street, Christian Street, North Street, Rockland Street, Locust Street, their big activity as far as meeting with large groups was the picnic, what I call the Sunday school picnic.
And that they couldn't even use the pool.
Oh, no. I mean, like I said, every year, I mean, this wasn't now and then, but every year we had at this event at Rocky Springs. And you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people coming. And the pool was always closed. And then the excuse they gave us was they're cleaning the pool, or they had to do some repairs on the pool. But miraculously, the following day, this was like on a Sunday, the following Monday, the pool was open again. And that happened every year. I mean, it wasn't no time. Like I said, when I became an adult, I then participated with groups that went to Rocky Springs to protest, marching. And of course, that had an impact on people coming to the Rocky Springs period. I'm talking about primarily whites stopped coming to Rocky Springs at certain times. to the point where they closed down the pool. Then once they closed down the pool, we had no reasons to protest there. Our next step was to begin to protest at these different other places. And so, but I mean, that's the swimming, again, I can recall as I got older, people began to go to the waterworks, but I never went to the waterworks to swim.
So when you had your children or nieces and nephews, times had changed a little bit, but did you guys teach them about swimming in the creek or teach them anything about you guys' experiences with swimming down at the creek?
I used to explain to my kids, because think about it now, I mean, I'm 84, and being 84, I began to have children, and I have 7. So in the later years, I had some children too, but the early ones, I used to have to explain to them they couldn't go swimming at different places until we began to march, and then of course that changed. But yeah, I mean, you had to explain to them the history. In fact, I worked for the city for 18 years, and I was chief of human resources for the city. And as a result of that, I remember I served 3 different mayors. The first one was Mayor Smithcall. Mayor Stewart, and then Charlie Smithcall. And Charlie was very interested in their carcels, the museum where you have the horses and all those kind of different animals, you rode that. And he wanted to, he was talking about reenacted the carcels again, and he wanted to be involved in that. And I had to say at one of the staff meetings, I don't agree with that. And the reason why, he wanted to know why, and I explained to him my experience at Rocky Springs was not a pleasant experience, even though it was one of the key points growing up each summer of the Sunday school picnic, that bitter taste of not being able to swim there. And my parents used to have to tell me, I used to wonder, why can't I go swimming at Rocky Springs? And they used to have to tell me eventually, to make it very simple, the color of my skin. That's the only reason. And I had to share that with my kids, so that they understood, a couple of them, as they were coming up, so that they understood. Then they could share that with their brothers and sisters.
So can you tell us about your thoughts on the pollution that's within the river today, or even back then?
Well, there's a lot of pollution in the river today. I mean, there's no question about it. But back there, it was also a lot. But you didn't think about that at least I didn't as a child. And the group that I used to go around with, they didn't think about that. We weren't worrying about the pollution. We were worrying about getting cooled off, going in the water, swimming, and then. But like I said, you had to wear your sneakers because you had to be concerned about grass or anything else on the bottom of there. But back then, I mean, I didn't think about pollution. I mean, a kid don't think about pollution. Parents do. And that's another reason they don't want us to go down to the pool. Not the pool, but the creek. The reason why is because one of the things was the danger. And secondly, of course, the pollution. It wasn't as polluted then as it is today.
So would you let your children swim down at the Conestoga?
Oh, no, of course not. Not now.
Not at all. Not even with their shoes, or water shoes.
No. That creek is polluted.
So why not?
Well, because I understand the pollution. I understand all those things. I understand what my parents were trying to tell me, but it's like any parent. When you're coming up, you think your parents are way out there in right field until you become a parent. And then you get concerned about your children. And as a result of getting concerned about your children, you recognize what your parents were trying to teach you at that point in time. No question about it. My kids wouldn't be able to go swimming in no pogies. Oh no, my goodness, no.
Not even with your.
I don't care what they have on. They can't go swimming in no pogies. No way in the world. And the city needs to recognize that. That's the other thing I really need to say or emphasize. The city and the county needs to recognize that black folks aren't going back to where they used to be. It just isn't going to happen anymore. And so as a result of that, they need to make provisions to get lifeguards, to get whatever it takes to run that county pool. They need to do that. Because black people, it's only a hop, skip, and jump as far as walking down to the county park if you live in the city. Now, I don't live in the city, but if I lived in the city, it would be nothing. I used to live on Green Street. It would be nothing to walk from Green Street down to the county park. And so they don't need a car. They don't even need a bicycle. They can walk there. They have picnics out there constantly. Surely they can make provisions to provide swimming for the community, because that's where the blacks would go swimming, most of them. They're not going to Overlook. They have to go way out on the Little Spike. They're not going to Maple Grove. They would have to go. I don't even know if Maple Grove is still existing today. But whatever, they're not going out into the county to go swimming.
So, do you have any knowledge as to, or any stories as to other experiences down at the river? Were there any, what are those things called? Not a circus, but like a amusement park, like what are those things called? Kind of like similar to what they had at Rocky Springs, something like that. Well, no, I guess not, because you said that you guys went over to Rocky Springs.
Yeah, no. I mean, as far as an amusement park, it was there or over at Everett Hand. You play baseball and things of that nature.
Can you speak to your experience with the Boy Scouts and what you guys all did at Camp Shan and being in the river? Did you guys go kayaking on the river?
We went kayaking. We also learned to respect elders. We learned to. But we were drilled with all kinds of ethical kinds of things that you learn either at church or at the community center. We learned crafts, a lot of different crafts. We participated in that. But it was just it was like a vacation for a week. As a Boy in the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, you went to Camp Shan for a week. And that, for us, when I was coming up, that you look forward to that.
Did most of the boys already know how to swim? Did you guys kind of already teach them before they got to the Scouts, or did they have an opportunity to learn while in the Scouts?
I wasn't taught to swim in the Scouts. I mean, I can only tell you that most of the folks that I traveled around with knew how to swim because they went to pogies. And going to pogies, you learn to swim. Like I said, you didn't go there with the older kids not learning to swim, because it's no question. They throw you right in the water. And then, of course, we used to have like a old tire that you used to ride, tied onto a branch, with a rope on it, and then you swing out and then let go and go into the water. Things of that nature. That was our activity, yeah.
Do you have any stories about parents catching you guys down at the pogies? Anybody's parent ever show up or anything like that?
I know my aunt came down, because I used to go down there a lot with my cousins. Richard Sims, who used to be judge here in the city. Charles Sims, Herman Sims, with the Simses. My mother and their mother were sisters. So we used to always hang together, and we used to go down there. And one time my aunt came down, But the second time, my granddad came, and he used to discipline us with the. You go to a circus and the canes. See those canes? You try to throw a ring on it. He'd pick us up by our ankles and give us a few cracks. So I mean, once we got that kind of discipline, we had to be very careful. But as a child, you become very creative. You innovate kinds of things that you wouldn't think about, of how to go from home to the pogies to swim and then come back, until you got to the point where you went early enough so that you let your shoes and everything dry out by the time you got back home. But no, it was no question. They didn't. Our parents didn't want us to swim down there. And I don't know of any parents that wanted their children to swim down there. I've heard stories later on that what you were referring to in reference to any parents having picnics or whatever. I didn't experience that coming up. I mean, that's that wasn't in our cards.
You guys just went to Rocky Springs.
Went to Rocky Springs, and like I said. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, as far as any kind of like picnics and all.
Let me check. Are there any lasting thoughts as far as the ways that the city could improve the river or anything like that?
No, what the city needs to do, the river is not a place for kids to swim to start with. Unless you're going to have supervision down there. What the city needs to do and the county needs to do is open up that county pool. Give some substance to that. I mean, if they need to add to the loss that they have each summer, then that's worth it. Because if it's not, I can tell you, eventually, the kids today are much more aggressive than the kids were back in my day. The things of the Black Lives Matter and those kinds of things. Our children aren't the same. And as a result, I can see that with my grandchildren-in-law. They're not the same. They're not going to accept what I accepted, or even what my children accepted. They're not going to. My youngest is 37. My oldest is 61. But the younger kids are not going to accept what I went through. They're just not going to do it. We're not going back. And the city needs to understand that. Black folks are not going back. You can't give people a certain taste of freedom, and it's not total freedom to start with, but whatever little taste of freedom we have, you can't give them that and then think you're going to take it away from them. I mean, that's like giving a child ice cream cone. As they begin to taste the ice cream cone, you take it away from them. It just isn't going to happen.
So you've been able to see them build a pool, and now you've been able to see them take it away.
Yeah, well, from what I've read in the newspaper, and that's not going to stop, because we're probably, I assume in several weeks we will end up with a group going down to the commissioners and protesting that the city and the county are going right back where they used to be. And it isn't going to happen. It just isn't going to happen.